Welcome to Over and Out with DawnNews. I'm Saadi Raza here in Dallas, Texas. With me is Ahmed Khwaja in the UAE. Today is June 8th, and we'll be reviewing four matches that happened in the ICC World Cup. Let's start off with today's game, the big sort of Ashes T20 showdown between Australia and England. And we finally had a team past 200 for the first time in the World Cup. I was looking at the scorecard. I watched the game, and what I was impressed with is the Australians made 200. No batter scored above 40, but no batter also played more than 25 balls. Is that the sort of T20 formula that you need in your batting lineup?
Well, that is T20 batting utopia, isn't it? Like, everybody plays with intent. Everybody gets a quick fire 35 plus score. They don't waste a lot of time there. Glenn Maxwell struggled a touch for the Aussies, but he's been completely bereft of form for the last 3 months. So even his run-a-ball innings was bearable. But like you mentioned, David Warner was tremendous. Travis Head was excellent. Marcus Stoinis, he's a sleeper candidate for player of the tournament so far. He's been outstanding with the bat, with the ball. And when Australia went past that 200 plus score, you thought, hang on, I think the English are in a trouble here. They started off well. Josh Butler was looking good. Phil Salt played well as well. Mitchell Starc, well, that's been his strength so far. He starts off the tournament poorly, but then he finds his touch and he finds his range when the playoff and the semi-final stage arrives. But after Phil Salt got out and Josh Butler got out to Adam Zampa, then the game well and truly started to run away from the English. And in the end, they took a pretty handy loss here, 36 runs. So that's certainly going to affect the net run rate calculations. And the Scots have a major opportunity here. You do expect them to lose to Australia, but then in their final encounter when they will be taking on Oman, if I'm not wrong, yes. So they certainly will know the equations, the pluses and minuses they will need to overcome England if they win their remaining two matches.
The other thing that struck me about the Australian innings is that in the power play, although they lost 2 wickets, they still scored 74 runs. And we've spoken about this before, both for Pakistan, both for other countries, that although wickets in the power play are at a premium, if you are scoring at a high rate, you can overcome those loss of wickets.
Absolutely. The biggest example of that is Glenn Maxwell. As I said, once again, he struggled, he toiled a bit. It was only a run-a-ball innings, but because they were so ahead of the game and the partnership was going at a good tempo, it doesn't matter if your individual strike rate is low, as long as the tempo and the strike rate, so to speak, of the partnership is decent, then that covers up for any individual wrongdoings or failings that it may be. And like you mentioned, they were so ahead of the game, they had that cushion to just take off the foot off the pedal for a little while. Their current run rate came below 10 for a few stages, but then the big hits provided later in the innings from the likes of Matthew Wade and Marcus Stoinis got them that 200 plus score.
And of course, in typical Australian fashion, everyone chipped in. They used 6 bowlers, including Maxwell, Zampa, 4 overs for 28, took 2 wickets, and of course Pat Cummins, 4 overs, 23 with 2 wickets. Let's move on to South Africa, Netherlands. This was played again in US at the Nassau County Stadium. There was some, I saw this report that this was the same deck that'll be used tomorrow for the India-Pakistan game. I don't know how true that is. But South Africa almost made a meal of it. I think they really needed Miller to step up. You know, his 59 of 51 basically saved them. This could have been a real case of deja vu for the South Africans against the Dutch.
Yeah, I think first of all, let's talk about their bowling, which is outstanding once again. Like we mentioned in previous reviews as well, this track here at the Nassau County Stadium is tailor-made for South African bowlers. It's dry, it has that extra bounce. So those tall, fast bowlers, they hit the seam, they bowl that hard length, back of length area, and that extra bounce, that variable bounce, in fact, created a lot of problems for the Dutch batters. And ironically, it was the former South African under-19 batter, Sibrand Engelbrecht, who was the only one who looked really comfortable against their bowling. Andrich Nokia bowled beautifully. Othniel Bartman has been a great find for the South Africans, and Marco Jansen was tremendous in the field as well as with the ball in hand. And Kagiso Rabada, we know, of course, super consistent. Keshav Maharaj bowled really well. So it was just a relentless assault on the Dutch batters. And then South Africa, well, we know what they do in ICC events sometimes. They were 12 for 4 at one stage, a nightmarish start with the Quinton de Kock run out first ball, but thankfully they recovered, they gathered themselves, and David Miller played one of the finest knocks I think we've seen from a South African batter at an ICC tournament for a long while. And Tristan Stubbs, getting that promotion up to number 4 consistently. So even though he's known as a biffer, as a hitter of the ball, as a finisher, he's shown a lot of composure and a lot of maturity for his young years.
And that's where their bowling depth came in, because even though they were 12-4-4, you only need to get up to 104. Bartman, as you mentioned, 4 overs, took 4 wickets, only gave up 11 runs, and Nokia's second game in a row took wickets and only conceded 19. Let's go to the last match that happened in Dallas. This was the Friday night match, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Almost 6,000 people showed up. It was a pretty good crowd, and I think Sri Lanka is in danger of getting eliminated early. Back-to-back losses, and hats off to Bangladesh. They were struggling. I think they were 34 for 3 in the power play, chasing 125, but they made it with an over to spare.
Once again, the Sri Lankan batting making a meal of it. They were 70 for 2 when Pathum Nissanka was batting so beautifully. He was on 40 odd when he got out. Then an unbelievable collapse ensued once again, and just restricted to 124 runs. Like you mentioned, the Bangla Tigers almost made a meal of it, but Litan Das playing a very decent knock. And then, of course, it was only a target of 125. And you could see the emotional scenes there at the Grand Prairie Cricket Stadium. There were Bangladesh fans in tears when they won that. So this win meant that extra special. Of course, it's become a bit of an emotional and a very heated derby between these two nations. I'm not sure what the reason is, but we saw what happened in the ODI World Cup as well, when Shakib Al Hasan refused to take back his appeal when Angelo Matthews was given timed out. So that certainly raised the temperature level of this clash. And Bangladesh, well, they're making a very decent start to the ICC Men's T20 World Cup. Of course, it is a very tricky group, so getting one over the Sri Lankans will always hold them in good stead.
And just to plug, this was the 4th and final match here in Dallas. I think the organizers, the owners, the Texas Super Kings, Anurag Jain and Ross Perot Jr., they've done a wonderful job with that stadium. 4 matches, which all good matches. US Canada in the first night, obviously Pakistan US, then Nepal Dutch game was sold out. They had over 7,000 people there, with a lot of Nepalis flying in from all over the US to see that game. So it was great to see in Dallas, and hopefully we get more tournaments. Obviously the Major League Cricket season will be starting after this World Cup. Last match, Afghanistan, a true dark horse. I think that's sort of coming up in this T20 World Cup. Absolutely crushed New Zealand. They scored 159 for 6, and then bundled the Kiwis out for 75 all out. Rashid, of course, the star, taking 4 wickets for 17 runs in his 4 overs. But once again, the platform was set by that opening partnership of Gurbaz and Zadran, 103 runs, century partnership. Second game in a row as well for both of them.
They really applied themselves on these tricky wickets, and they have a great bowling attack tailor-made for it. They have those medium pacers who swing the ball, so they make that ball talk in the power play. And then, of course, you have the spin trio of Noor, Rashid Khan and Nabi, who are so difficult to get away. And like you mentioned, a 100-run opening stand once again from Gurbaz and Zadran, a very patient 44 from Zadran. And, well, Rahmanullah Gurbaz, we know he can turn on the fireworks on command. He hit a 105-meter 6 of Daryl Mitchell that was topped by Phil Salt this evening against Mitchell Stark, 106 meters. But like you mentioned, once they had set that platform, and of course New Zealand, the last team to take to the field in this ICC Men's T20 World Cup, they didn't have any warm-up games. They only took to have practice sessions. Devon Conway coming back after a 3-month layoff with injury, one of the key players in the top order. He looked very rusty. Finn Allen got cleaned up with an absolute beauty from Fazal Haq, who has 9 wickets in 2 matches already, so he's leading the top wicket takers chart by some margin. And once they got those early breakthroughs, the spin trio, when they turn it on, when they're on the offensive, they can prove to be unplayable. And as they did, Rashid Khan, 4 wickets to his name, was absolutely unplayable on the night in Barbados.
And for the Kiwis, this is a tough group, with West Indies, the host nation, also in that group. I think Afghanistan is going to be a tough out in the Super 8. They're tournament tested. This group of players have been together now for multiple ICC tournaments. They play a lot of franchise cricket. They play together well, and the pieces just fit. They're going to be a tough out.
Oh, absolutely. I think they're going to be two or three early exits. Maybe Pakistan is in the firing line. Sri Lanka are most certainly in the firing line. And maybe even England, after today's hammering at the hands of the Aussies, are in serious trouble as well. So it certainly does feel like Afghanistan. I think you need to underline and circle their name. If they make it into the Super 8s, well, they certainly will. I think they are very, very strong contenders to get to the semifinals. And who knows, they could maybe even go all the way.
Thank you very much. We'll do it all over again tomorrow.